Can you imagine Christmas Eve, surrounded by your family, when suddenly your own brother, a cop, slams you in handcuffs? I thought my life was over. But what happened next? A homeless man I once helped walked into court, ripped off a disguise, and exposed a truth so shocking it made my own father's face turn ghost white. That night, the air was thick with the scent of roasted meat and cinnamon cookies. My heart was practically bursting, like a kid on Christmas morning. It was December 24th, and I, Nathan Reyes, just a 26-year-old warehouse tech in Detroit, genuinely believed this would be the most perfect Christmas of my life. My existence was simple back then, just working hard, fixing machinery, no drama, no storms. Oh, how naive I was. That night, everything changed. Forever. Our dinner table was overflowing with family. My parents, Camila and Vincent, had been hustling since dawn. Twinkling lights shimmered everywhere, and our towering Christmas tree, covered in glittering glass ornaments, glowed softly. Laughter and loud chatter filled the room. Old stories, proud parents showing off their kids, people bragging about their jobs. I sat beside my mom, Camila, a gentle accountant who worried about everyone and always had a soft smile. She was reminiscing about my brother and my first Christmas, her voice warm with love. My dad, Vincent, owned a small auto repair shop. He sat at the head of the table, his usual stern, patriarchal expression firmly in place. He didn't say much, but when he did, it was an order, and everyone listened. The whole family was buzzing, waiting for my older brother, Jackson. He was 32, a police officer, the pride of the family. Our hero with a shining badge, always ready with some thrilling crime-fighting story. He'd promised to come early, bringing good wine. Honey, this is the first year everyone's together. This Christmas is going to be so much fun, Mom whispered, squeezing my hand under the table. I just nodded, a huge grin plastered across my face. I love Christmas. That feeling of all of us together, forgetting the daily grind, it was everything. Then, a sound tore through the joyful air. Sirens. At first, I brushed it off, but they grew louder, closer, followed by the roar of engines. Everyone rushed to the window. That must be Jackson. Aunt Maria chirped, grinning. He always loves making an entrance. The family laughed, clapping, thinking he was bringing colleagues. But then, a patrol car screeched to a halt right in front of our house. Red and blue lights flashed, angry eyes piercing the falling snow. My heart hammered. A cold dread seeped into my bones. Why like this? Jackson emerged from the car, his face a mask of stone, no smile, no warmth. Several officers followed, flashlights cutting through the gloom, radios crackling with static. The clapping died. The laughter vanished. Jackson's expression had frozen the entire room. The cozy warmth of Christmas Eve evaporated, replaced by an icy blast. He pushed the door open. His polished black boots clicked onto our festive red Christmas rug. He scanned the room, his sharp eyes finally landing on me. My heart clenched. Everyone listen up, he announced, his voice flat, emotionless. I received an anonymous tip that Nathan is in possession of illegal substances. I have to investigate and clear this up. Those words, they exploded in the quiet room like a bomb. Silence. Heavy. Crushing. Only a choked sob from a corner broke it. My family stared at me, then at each other, confusion warring with fear. Illegal drugs. Me? I froze, mouth agape, my mind completely blank. What are you talking about, Jackson? Are you joking? My voice trembled. He didn't smile, didn't even blink. His voice was ice. Nathan, come with me to the car for a search. It's procedure. To prove you're innocent. I shook my head frantically, my feet glued to the floor. No, I didn't do anything. Who called? This is a mistake. Mom gripped my hand, her face white. Jackson, what are you saying? Nathan would never. But he raised a hand to silence her. Mom, let me do my job. If it's a misunderstanding, even better. The whole family started murmuring, standing up. Whispers filled the air. What on earth? Christmas Eve? Nathan's so kind, Who would target him? My father, Vincent, stood up. His face was grave, but he said nothing. He just nodded at Jackson, a silent approval. I felt a gentle push. Jackson guided me towards the door, my legs heavy, leaden. The entire family spilled into the front yard, into the soft snowfall. Neighbors started pouring out, pointing, staring. The flashing lights turned our yard into a stage for a tragic play. Jackson barked orders. Check Nathan's car first. Trunk, jacket pockets. The officers moved like hunting dogs. They opened the trunk of my old car. And then, oh God, they pulled out small, opaque white packets, glittering under the flashlights. Care to explain what this white powder is? One officer asked, a triumphant smirk on his face. I shook my head, my voice breaking. It's not mine. I don't know anything about it. They continued, searching the pockets of the jacket I was wearing. More packets. The flashlights illuminated each one, making them look like tiny monsters. My family watched, stunned. Then the whispers started, louder now. How could Nathan do something like that? He's always been so gentle, such a kind, caring boy. Every word sliced into my heart. I'd never been involved in anything bad. I was just a normal guy who loved reading, fixing cars with Dad, hugging Mom every night. Why was this happening? Who framed me? Mom, Camila, collapsed, covering her face, sobbing uncontrollably. Her shoulders shook as if her entire world was crumbling. Nathan, my son, he could never do something so terrible, she cried, tears streaming. She rushed forward to hug me, but an officer gently pushed her back. I wanted to scream, wanted to hug her, but my hands trembled, useless. My father, Vincent, stood motionless by the car, his eyes empty, staring into nothing. Dad! I pleaded desperately. Dad, I didn't do anything. Someone framed me. My voice was lost in the cold wind. He said nothing, just leaned on the car roof, detached, as if none of this concerned him. My heart ached so sharply. Dad, why? Why aren't you defending me? My pleas drowned in the freezing Christmas air. The joyful laughter replaced by malicious whispers. Neighbors filmed with their phones. Look, Nathan's getting arrested. Drugs. The Reyes family is finished. They turned my humiliation into entertainment. I felt like a hunted animal, exposed. Then Jackson stepped forward, handcuffs in his hand. Nathan Reyes, you are under arrest for possession and distribution of illegal narcotics. He said it, his voice completely devoid of emotion, like he was reading a warrant to a stranger. I struggled. I cried out, Jackson, you have to believe me. I didn't do this. This is a conspiracy. But officers pinned me against the car, cuffing my hands in front of my entire family, my whole neighborhood. The metallic click echoed, cold as the snow. Mom rushed forward again, clinging to me, screaming, Jackson, you can't do this to your own brother. Nathan is your little brother. She cried until her voice gave out, clutching my jacket, her tears soaking my shoulder. Relatives tried to intervene, but the tension was suffocating. Then, my father straightened up. His voice cut through the air, cold as ice. Camila, be quiet. Let the law do its job. She stared at him in shock, then released me, stumbling back, tears pouring. My blood ran cold. Why would Dad say that? Why was my brother doing this? I gave up. Completely. I let them push me into the patrol car. Flashing lights, venomous whispers. Snow fell gently, but I didn't feel the cold. Only a burning pain in my chest. Christmas dinner turned to ashes. The car pulled away, taking me from the warm house into the darkness of the most horrifying Christmas night of my life. Through the window, I saw my mother collapse, sobbing. My relatives stood frozen. My father just stood there, his gaze as cold and empty as stone. I kept replaying it. That anonymous call. Someone reported me. Someone planted the drugs. But why did Jackson believe it so easily? He was my brother. In that car, handcuffed, I tried to think. How did those packets get in my jacket? I put it on this morning. Nothing unusual. The trunk had been locked. Someone framed me. But who? And why? Jackson was my hero, The person I'd looked up to since childhood. Why was he doing this? Was he forced? No. His face had been cold, without a trace of hesitation. Was the anonymous call just an excuse? The car sped through the familiar streets of Detroit, pale yellow streetlights painting the fresh snow. I thought about my life. 26 years old, no wife, no kids, just a stable job, a family. I was kind. Everyone always said that. I like helping people, fixing neighbors' cars for free, bringing food to the homeless in the park. Why had fate thrown me into this hell? My heart raced, cold sweat pouring out, despite the freezing winter night. The patrol car finally stopped. A grim, gray police station loomed, black iron bars menacing under flickering neon lights. Officers yanked me out, their grips tight enough to bruise. I stumbled, my legs heavy with cuffs and the fear that gnawed at my very soul. Move it. Walk now. One barked, shoving me inside. The air was thick, oppressive, a sickening mix of burnt coffee and sweat. They marched me down an echoing hallway, my boots clanking like drums of doom. Then, they shoved me into a holding cell. A narrow, freezing, damp box. 4 gray concrete walls, a hard metal cot, a paper-thin mattress, and a filthy toilet. The iron door slammed shut. The lock clicked, a final, chilling verdict. I collapsed onto the cot, still cuffed, my mind a chaotic whirlwind. Christmas dinner, laughter, the smell of roasted meat, and then sirens, flashing lights, those strange drug packets. Who framed me? Where did that anonymous call come from? Jackson, my own brother. Why? I shook my head, trying to clear the fog, but the thoughts crashed over me like violent waves. That night stretched on forever. Sleep was impossible. I lay curled up, shivering from the cold. Wind whistled through the tiny barred window, carrying the biting snow. Screams echoed from the next cell. Someone retched. A guard's radio crackled. All I could think of was Mom. She'd be home, subbing, trembling. She was my safe place, always shielding me from Dad's harsh words. And Dad, his silence was like stone. His empty stare haunted me. And Jackson, the family's pride, had now thrown me into this hell. Hot, stinging tears rolled down my cold cheeks. I prayed for a miracle, for this to be a nightmare. But deep down, I knew this hell had only just begun. The next morning, reality hit even harder. The clank of the lock jolted me awake. 2 officers hauled me to my feet, cuffed me, and marched me to an interrogation room. It was colder than the cell itself. An old wooden table, hard metal chairs, and a one-way mirror. I could feel eyes watching. 2 detectives waited, one tall, bearded, the other skinny with glasses. They read my file in flat, mechanical voices. Nathan Reyes, 26, warehouse technician, arrested for possession and distribution. They turned on a camera, its red light blinking like a demon's eye. Then they laid out the packets, those opaque white packets, gleaming malevolently under the fluorescent lights. I didn't do anything. I bloated out, heart pounding. Those aren't mine. Someone planted them. I repeated it, voice shaking, but determined. I told them everything. The Christmas party, the anonymous tip, the search. But the detectives just smirked. Everyone says that. The bearded one sneered. Then the questions came like bullets. Who are your partners? Where did you get the stuff? How many times have you sold? Confess. Cooperate, and we'll go easy on you. I shook my head wildly, sweat soaking my shirt. I don't know. I don't have partners. I've never even seen these things. The questions grew more aggressive, suffocating. My head spun. The room whirled. I wanted to scream, to slam the table, but my hands were cuffed. I could only sit there and take it. Suddenly, the door opened. Jackson. He walked in, stood behind the detectives, arms crossed, his face as cold as the night before. My heart clenched. Jackson, I didn't do this. I whispered, desperately hoping he'd save me. But he just looked at me, his voice flat. Nathan, confess. Cooperate, and you'll get a lighter sentence. If you don't, you'll go away for life. I stared at my brother, tears spilling, utter despair washing over me. What are you saying? I was framed. You're my brother. You're supposed to believe me. I tried again, my voice breaking, reminding him of our childhood, how he used to protect me from bullies. But Jackson didn't flinch. His eyes were stone. The evidence is clear, Nathan. Don't make this worse. He turned and walked out, leaving me completely shattered. They dragged me back to the cell. I collapsed onto the cot, my mind blank. Why? Why was my brother doing this? He'd be my hero, the cop with the shiny badge. Now he was pushing me deeper into hell. I kept replaying that anonymous call. Did Jackson know something? Or was he forced? No. His face had shown no hesitation. Fear crept in. I curled up, trembling. The next day, visitors. My heart leaped. Mom. It had to be Mom. But when I saw them through the thick glass, it was both my parents. Mom sat there, eyes red and swollen, hands shaking. Dad sat beside her, face as cold as ever. I grabbed the phone. Mom, I didn't do this. I whispered immediately. But Dad cut me off, his voice harsh. Nathan, you've been nothing but a burden your whole life. Now you've disgraced the entire family. Confess, so we don't have to carry the shame anymore. I froze. It felt like a slap. Dad, how can you say that? I didn't do anything. He shook his head, relentless. You've always been weak, always needing protection. You messed up. Own it. Don't drag the whole family down with you. His voice was ice. No concern. No encouragement. I looked at him, my heart breaking. Dad, I'm your son. Mom burst into tears. Nathan, I believe you. I'll find a lawyer. I'll help you, she whispered, tears streaming. But Dad immediately shut her down. Camila, the evidence is overwhelming. He has to face the consequences. He pulled her up, not letting her say another word, and led her out. I watched them go, tears pouring down my own face. The visitation room felt empty, leaving me utterly alone with the pain. The news spread like wildfire. Papers screamed. Police officer's younger brother arrested for drugs on Christmas Eve. Photos of me, handcuffed, pale under flashing lights, went viral. Friends, neighbors, co-workers, everyone turned away. No calls, no messages. I imagine co-workers whispering, neighbors pointing, old friends deleting my number. In that cramped cell, I curled up, completely broken. I knew I was innocent, but how could I prove it? The evidence was airtight. My statements could be twisted. Who would believe me? Not even Jackson. My own brother. My old life. The simple job, hugging Mom, fixing cars with Dad. All of it destroyed. I hugged my knees, shaking, fear eating away at me with every second. The whole world had abandoned me. My family, society. I was even starting to doubt myself. On the second night, real terror set in. Lying on that hard, freezing cot, listening to the wind howl, I thought, I might never get out. Is this the end? Prison, disgrace, loneliness, forever. Tears fell again, but this time, there were tears of pure, absolute despair. I prayed for a miracle, but deep down, I knew this hell had only just begun. The days blurred into one long, unending nightmare. Stuck in that cramped cell, eating tasteless meals, listening to screams echo. Every morning, I stared at the stained ceiling, wondering what new pain the day would bring. A public defender was assigned to me. He was young, fresh out of law school, with thick glasses and a trembling voice. He visited a few times, scribbling notes, promising to focus on the anonymous tip, but his tone lacked any real confidence. How could we win? With damning evidence and my own brother's testimony, I felt utterly doomed. Just a week later, the preliminary hearing was scheduled. Everything was moving so fast, I wasn't mentally prepared. The amount of drugs they'd supposedly found was massive, enough to brand me a serious offender. And being the younger brother of Jackson Reyes, a well-known Detroit police officer, turned my case into a media circus. My story was front-page news. Family torn apart by drugs. Officer arrests own brother on Christmas Eve. When they escorted me to the courthouse, a swarm of reporters blocked the entrance. Camera flashes blinded me. Voices shouted my name. My heart pounded. Cold sweat prickled despite the freezing air. Why was this all happening so quickly? I wasn't ready for this public judgment. The courtroom was large, yet suffocating. Rows of polished wooden benches reeked of cheap perfume from the packed gallery. The judge, a stern old man with gold-rimmed glasses, sat high on the bench, looking down like a god of fate. I sat in the defendant's chair, wrists loosely cuffed, wearing a drab gray prison jumpsuit. A caged animal. My lawyer sat beside me, nervously flipping through papers, equally overwhelmed. The prosecutor, a sharp middle-aged woman with her hair in a tight bun and a voice like a blade, stood. She projected images of the evidence onto a huge screen, those opaque white packets, gleaming under flashlights. The defendant, Nathan Reyes, was caught in possession of a large quantity of illegal narcotics sufficient for distribution, she declared, her voice echoing. Then she read Jackson's report. My own brother's words, meticulously detailed. The anonymous tip, the search, the discovery of the drugs, the testimony of other officers. Every detail matched perfectly, as if it had all been scripted. I sat there, cornered. No way out. Every photo, every word, another brick in the prison wall being built around me. My lawyer tried to counter, but it was painfully weak. He argued the anonymous call was suspicious, that someone could have planted the drugs. There's no direct evidence of intent to distribute, he said, his voice slightly shaking. The prosecutor cut him off instantly. Caught red-handed with the substances in his personal vehicle and clothing. That is the clearest evidence possible. Everything tilted heavily towards the prosecution. The court grew more suspicious. The judge nodded. The gallery murmured. I felt like a lamb surrounded by wolves. Every time I tried to speak in my own defense, it only made things worse. When the prosecutor questioned me directly, I stammered. I didn't do anything. Someone put those packets in my car and pockets. But she shot back. That's the standard denial of a first-time offender. There is zero evidence to support the defendant's claims. Her tone was mocking, and the room tittered with laughter. My face burned. My heart raced. I wanted to scream my innocence, that this was a conspiracy, but my words were just whispers lost in the heavy air. My lawyer tugged my sleeve. Don't say anything more. Let me handle it. But I knew he was drowning, too. The trial dragged on for days, but each hour felt like a year. Endless questions, mounting evidence, and fear growing inside me like a tumor. Then came sentencing day, the moment I dreaded most. The courtroom was packed, not a single empty seat. Reporters crowded the back, cameras flashing non-stop, whispers buzzing like a disturbed hive. The air was thick with tension, the smell of sweat and perfume. I was led in, hands trembling, and sat in the defendant's chair. I looked around. Jackson and my father, Vincent, were in the front row, faces cold as ice. They wouldn't meet my eyes, just leaned in, whispering secrets I couldn't hear. My heart ached. My father, my brother, once my pillars, now sat there like strangers, waiting for my sentence to close this chapter. Didn't they feel any pain? Why weren't they fighting for me? Beside them, Mom, Camila, was hunched over, face buried in her hands, sobbing. Her shoulders shook uncontrollably. She looked years older, her hair grayer, eyes swollen from endless crying. Her pain cut through me like a knife, choking me. In that heavy moment, as the judge banged the gavel for order, I bowed my head, trying to breathe. Then, by chance, I glanced toward the very back row and froze. There, among the crowd of strangers, sat the familiar old homeless man from the park. He sat quietly, silver beard, unkempt, wearing the same tattered coat. My heart raced. Why was he here? The old man looked up, met my eyes, and smiled. A gentle, warm smile in that cold courtroom. He gave a small wave, as if to say, "It'll be all right, kid." His eyes were full of kindness, just like all the times we'd met. Memories flooded back. That park was my escape after work. He was always on that same bench, surrounded by his bags. I'd given him coins. He'd rasped, "You've got a good heart." I'd brought him old jackets, sandwiches, hot coffee. Sometimes we'd talk about life. He'd tell me about his years on the streets, but always with optimism. Life is like a river, son. It bends and twists, but it always reaches the sea. His simple advice helped me through tough days. Don't let fear win, he'd said once, patting my shoulder. I never asked his name, just called him the old man from the park. And now, here he was, in the middle of my fateful trial, offering a tiny spark of hope. But against a mountain of evidence, public opinion, and my own family's betrayal, what could a homeless man do? The courtroom still buzzed with malicious whispers. Reporters scribbled. The judge sat, gavel ready to fall. I knew, with absolute clarity, my life was about to end. No one in this room could save me. The air felt heavy as a boulder, crushing my chest. Every stare, every rustle of paper, every tense breath from the crowd. I felt small, powerless, suffocating. In that moment, I understood something even more painful than the sentence about to be pronounced. I was utterly, completely alone, drowned by fabricated evidence, betrayed by my own blood. The second that gavel came down, my entire life would be buried forever. By the way, if you're still with me, make sure to hit subscribe. More unbelievable stories are coming. The judge cleared his throat, ready to pronounce the words that would seal my fate. The entire courtroom held its breath. The air grew so thick it pressed down on my chest. All whispering stopped. I glanced at the front row. Vincent and Jackson sat there, eyes cold, faint, secretive smirks playing on their lips. No grief, no tears. It was like they already knew the outcome, as if this whole sentencing was just the final act of a play they'd scripted. My own father and brother, watching like detached spectators, not family. Why were they smiling? Why weren't they fighting for me? That betrayal cut deeper than any knife. I bowed my head, my cuffed hands shaking, fingers clenched white. I waited for the words, guilty, imprisonment. Words that would obliterate my life. No job, no freedom, no future, only darkness. Just as the judge raised his gavel, ready to bring it down, a powerful, unexpected shout exploded from the back of the room. Stop! I have proof that he is innocent. The raspy, determined voice sliced through the silence like a bomb. Everyone whipped around. Murmurs rose like a tidal wave. I jerked my head up, stunned, heart pounding wildly. It was the homeless old man from the park. He had leapt to his feet, one arm raised high, his silver beard trembling, tattered coat flapping. His face flushed with emotion, his eyes burning with resolve. Why? Why was he doing this? I couldn't understand. Yes, I'd helped him, given him spare change, an old jacket, talked on tired evenings. But this was a courtroom, not the park. He was a stranger, a wandering old man. How dare he stand up for me here? My heart raced. A tiny spark of hope flickered, then doubt rushed in. What could he possibly have? Empty words. Vincent and Jackson spun around, their faces turning crimson with rage, eyes murderous. Jackson shot to his feet first, flashing his gleaming police badge. This is disruption of court proceedings. Officers, restrain that man and remove him immediately. Several uniformed officers moved towards the old man, hands on their holsters. The room erupted into chaos. Reporters snapped photos frantically, whispers turning into a roar. Mom lifted her tear-streaked face, staring at the old man in bewildered shock. I sat frozen, unable to believe my eyes. My own brother, Jackson, trying to silence the one person who might save me. Why was he panicking? His face had gone pale, his hands trembling, despite his attempts to maintain authority. But the old man didn't flinch. He stood tall, his voice calm and steady. Hold it! You cannot arrest me before I reveal the truth. Then, to everyone's astonishment, he slowly peeled off the fake silver beard. He shrugged off the ragged coat, tossing it onto the bench. He wiped his face with a handkerchief, removing layers of dirt, a masterful disguise that had hidden him for years. The courtroom fell into a stunned, breathless silence. The face revealed was not an old man's at all. It was a middle-aged man with short, cropped hair, sharp, intelligent eyes, and features I never thought I'd see again. When Vincent and Jackson saw that face, the blood drained from theirs. My father lurched to his feet, hands gripping the bench, his mouth working soundlessly. Jackson staggered backward, face ashen, his police badge slipping from his fingers and clattering to the floor. Tears bathed from my eyes, instantly uncontrollable, as recognition hit me like a thunderbolt. It was Uncle Jameson Reyes, Vincent's younger brother, the uncle who had vanished 3 years ago, presumed dead. We'd even held a symbolic funeral when his body was never found. The uncle I had adored as a child, who told adventure stories, taught me to fish, shielded me from Dad's harsh words. And he was the old man from the park I had been giving money to. Old coats, late-night conversations, memories flooded back like a tidal wave. All those evenings in the park, when he'd listen to me complain, offering gentle wisdom. "Nathan, you have a good heart. Never let anyone take that from you." I had never recognized him. The disguise was flawless. But those kind eyes, now I understood. He had been watching over me all this time, protecting me from afar. I sobbed aloud, my voice breaking so the whole room heard. "Uncle Jameson, is it really you?" Jameson looked at me, smiled warmly, then turned to the court, his voice ringing clear and strong. "I am Jameson Reyes, brother of Vincent Reyes and blood uncle to Nathan Reyes. I have been missing for 3 years, but I have returned today with evidence that proves my nephew is completely innocent. I demand the right to testify and present that evidence before this court." The courtroom exploded. Reporters scrambling, cameras flashing like lightning, voices rising in a storm. The judge pounded his gavel repeatedly for order, his own face stunned. He immediately ordered identity verification. Files were pulled. Assistants rushed to databases. Within minutes, he nodded gravely. Identity confirmed. Jameson Reyes is who he claims to be. Officers, stand down. Mr. Reyes, please approach the witness stand and present your evidence. At those words, Vincent and Jackson turned ghostly white, hands shaking uncontrollably. They tried to sit calmly, but panic blazed in their eyes. My father whispered frantically to Jackson, his face flushed and sweating. Jackson gripped the armrests until his knuckles went white, staring at Uncle Jameson as though at a ghost. I sat there, heart thundering, tears still streaming down my face. Why had Uncle been alive? Why the disguise? And what evidence did he have that could clear my name? My mother was sobbing louder now, but there were tears of joy and disbelief, staring at her long-lost brother-in-law. "Jameson, my brother-in-law, is alive." The entire courtroom held its breath again as Jameson walked to the center aisle, holding an old leather satchel, ready to unveil the truth that would turn this entire sentencing upside down. Uncle Jameson strode to the witness stand, each footstep ringing out firmly in the dead, silent courtroom. He set the old leather satchel on the evidence table, opening it slowly, deliberately drawing out the tension. From inside, he pulled a tiny USB drive, a thick stack of yellow documents, and a sleek black external hard drive. The entire courtroom erupted in an instant, murmurs rising like a wave. Reporters scrambling, camera flashes exploding. The judge banged his gavel. "Silence. Mr. Jameson, you may proceed." I stared at my uncle, heart pounding, a fragile spark of hope flickering through the lingering fear. "Please, Uncle, save me." Jameson took a deep breath. His voice rang out, clear, steady, and powerful, like a seasoned detective ready to crack the biggest case of his life. "Your Honor, 3 years ago, I was a private investigator working alongside the Detroit police to dismantle the city's largest drug trafficking ring. During that investigation, I discovered that the people behind it were none other than my own brother, Vincent Reyes, and my nephew, Jackson Reyes." Those words, they detonated like a bomb. The room fell deathly quiet, then exploded into chaos. Vincent shot to his feet, face crimson. "Lies! He's insane!" The judge roared, "Silence, Mr. Reyes, or you will be removed." Jackson remained seated, face drained of color, knuckles white as he gripped the armrests. I stayed at them, my heart breaking. My father and brother, involved in drugs. I couldn't even process what I was hearing. Uncle Jameson continued, calm, but unrelenting. When I was about to report my findings to the authorities, Vincent discovered what I knew. He threatened to kill me to keep me quiet. I had no choice. I faked my disappearance to save my life. I disguised myself as a homeless man, lived on the streets of Detroit, and kept gathering evidence from the shadows. He paused, looked the judge straight in the eye, then turned to me with warmth in his gaze. Suddenly, everything clicked. All those evenings in the park, when the old man listened to me talk about work, about family, saying, "Nathan, you have a good heart." He had been protecting me, watching Vincent and Jackson the whole time. Tears welled up again. Shock, gratitude, pain. 3 years on the streets, alone, just for this moment. To prove it, he plugged the USB into the projector. The huge screen lit up with grainy but unmistakable footage. The night before Christmas Eve, Jackson, my own brother, sneaking up to my car in the driveway. He opened the trunk, placed the white packets inside, then rummaged through my jacket, hanging in the garage, stuffing more packets into the pockets. "This is video I recorded in secret," Uncle Jameson explained. Jackson planted the drugs in Nathan's car and jacket the night before the arrest. Jackson dropped his head into his hands, his shoulders shaking. Vincent shook his head frantically, stammering, "That's not me in the video." But the evidence was undeniable. I watched the screen, my chest tightening until I could barely breathe. My brother. He framed me. Why? It didn't stop there. Uncle Jameson played an audio file from the hard drive. Vincent's cold, unmistakable voice filled the courtroom. "Sacrificing Nathan is fine. As long as we're safe, he's weak. He won't fight back." Then Jackson's voice, "One anonymous tip is all it takes." The room froze in horror. The prosecutor, the sharp woman who had torn into me, sat pale and speechless. The judge's eyebrows shot up, his hand tightening around the gavel. Every eye turned to Vincent and Jackson. They were unraveling. Vincent jumped up again, frantic. "That's fabricated. Someone doctored the recording." The judge thundered, "Be quiet. You are in contempt of court. Sit down." Vincent collapsed, sweating profusely, his face cycling from red to ghost white. Jackson just stayed at the floor. When the planting footage was replayed in slow motion, he buried his face completely. He knew there was no escape. Uncle Jameson pressed on, his voice growing stronger. He presented secret reports from the document stack. Vincent and Jackson are currently under federal investigation for their drug network. To divert attention, they decided to sacrifice Nathan, an easy scapegoat, someone gentle who wouldn't resist. He submitted bank records of money laundering through Vincent's auto shop. Massive transfers, fake invoices, hidden accounts. Nathan was framed from the beginning. He concluded, his voice trembling with emotion. "My nephew is innocent, and these documents will show everyone the truth." I broke down completely, sobbing harder than ever, shattered by the realization that the people I loved most had thrown me to the wolves to save themselves. Every happy family memory burned away in that moment. Dinners together, Dad talking about the shop, Jackson bragging about arrests. All of it a lie. I slumped in my chair, hands over my face, crying uncontrollably. How could they do this to me? In the gallery, my mother, Camila, let out a wail, hands shaking over her mouth as the truth crashed down. She stared at Vincent and Jackson in pure horror, unable to believe the husband and son she had devoted her life to had sacrificed her gentlest child to protect themselves. She had cooked for them, stayed up nights when Jackson was sick, mended Vincent's clothes. Now she sat shattered, tears streaming. I wanted to run to her, to say, "Mom, it's okay now. I'll be all right." But the guards held me back. Her pain doubled mine. My heart felt crushed. Then the prosecutor stood, her voice trembling. "Your Honor, in light of this new evidence, I move to stay the sentencing of Nathan Reyes and request the immediate arrest of Vincent Reyes and Jackson Reyes for investigation." The judge nodded gravely. "Motion granted. Officers, take them into custody now." The courtroom erupted. Reporters surged forward, cameras flashing, voices rising. Officers rushed the front row, cuffing Vincent and Jackson right there. Vincent struggled wildly. "This is a conspiracy. I'm innocent." But they forced him down and dragged him away. Jackson didn't resist. He just muttered under his breath towards Uncle Jameson. How are you still alive?" They were hauled out amid shouts and blinding flashes. I collapsed against my chair, unable to process what was happening. After endless despair, freezing jail nights, my father's blame, my brother's cold eyes, the vicious public gossip, the truth had finally turned in my favor. I cried, but now the tears were mixed with relief and unbearable pain. Uncle Jameson walked over, reached through the bailiff, and placed a hand on my shoulder. "Nathan, you're free." Mom rushed forward the moment the cuffs came off, throwing her arms around me. "My baby, I'm so sorry I didn't believe you," she whispered through sobs. I held her tight, crying into her shoulder. Reporters swarmed, questions flying, but everything felt like a dream. The betrayal from my own blood cut so deep, I didn't know how I would ever go on. But at least the nightmare, the prison nightmare, was over. I had a new one just begun. The next morning, everything unfolded like a dream. I was still in my cell, head foggy from the chaos, when the lock clanked. An officer stepped in, his voice flat. "Nathan Reyes, you're being released." I lifted my head, sure I'd misheard. "You've been cleared," he explained briefly. Federal investigators had verified every byte on Uncle Jameson's USB and hard drive. No edits, no fakes. The prosecutor had immediately filed a motion to dismiss all charges. I was innocent. No doubt left. They released me on the spot. My heart pounded. Just yesterday, my life felt over. Now, freedom was waiting. I stood on shaky legs and followed the officer out. The station still smelled of burnt coffee, but I wasn't a prisoner this time. The front doors swung open. Harsh Detroit winter sunlight poured in, blinding after days in darkness. I stepped outside, gaunt, unshaven, clothes wrinkled and stale, dark circles under my eyes, skin pale from despair. Waiting on the steps was Uncle Jameson. No fake beard, no tattered coat. He looked exhausted, worried. The face of a man who'd been running for years. Short silver hair, deep lines around his eyes, shoulders slightly stooped. He stood with his hands in his pockets, staring at me. I froze for a second, unable to believe it was real. Uncle Jameson, the uncle I thought was dead. The old man from the park who had been beside me all along. Then, like a dam breaking, I ran. I threw my arms around him, sobbing uncontrollably. "Uncle James, thank you for clearing my name," I whispered, my voice breaking, tears soaking his shoulder. Finally, someone had believed me, saved me, pulled me out of hell. He hugged me tight, rubbing my back. "Nathan, I'm so sorry I let you suffer this long. It's over now, kid." We stood there, on the police station steps, holding each other, crying like two lost children who had finally found their way home. Reporters lingered nearby, but in that moment, the world contained only the two of us. We went back to the familiar house, the same one where Christmas dinner had shattered. Mom had come home earlier, prepared a small meal, but her eyes were still red when she saw us. She threw her arms around Uncle Jameson, whispering, "Brother, how are you alive? Why didn't you come back sooner?" He gave her a sad smile, patted her shoulder. "Sister, I had to wait for the right moment. Now, I'll tell you everything." We sat in the living room, where the Christmas tree still stood, a few glass ornaments dangling, a painful reminder of that terrible night. Uncle Jameson poured water for everyone, took a deep breath, and began to speak in a low, steady voice, as if opening a secret book that had gathered dust for 3 years. 3 years ago, he said, I was a private investigator, assisting Detroit police on a major drug case. I started tracing suspicious transactions, following shipments, bugging phones. And slowly, I discovered that the people running one branch of the ring were none other than my own brother, Vincent, your father, and my nephew, Jackson. My chest tightened. My father and brother. My stern, honest dad. My hero brother. How? My brother. I couldn't believe my eyes, he said, his voice trembling. Vincent was laundering money through the auto shop. Jackson was using his badge to bury evidence, protecting the operation. When Uncle Jameson was about to turn everything over to the feds, Vincent found out. That night, Uncle overheard a conversation through a device he'd planted. Vincent and Jackson calmly discussed how to get rid of him. Hire a hitman. Stage an accident. Anything to make him disappear. They talk about it like the weather, Uncle said bitterly. Vincent said, Jameson knows too much. We have to take him out before he talks. My fists clenched, nails digging into my palms. I couldn't believe my own father and brother had been willing to kill their own blood to protect their profits. A part of me collapsed inside. Dad, Jackson, were you monsters all along? I remembered Dad scolding me for being weak, Jackson mocking me for not being tough enough. Now I understood. They chose me as the sacrifice for exactly those reasons. Tears rolled down my face again. Mom pulled me close, crying, too. How could they do this to their own family? Uncle knew high-ranking officers were already bought. He had their bribery list. He couldn't safely report it. That same night, he got his wife and daughter out. I used every trick I knew, he said, his eyes distant. Multiple vehicles, crossing state lines, fake names, staying off cameras. I got them into temporary witness protection in another state, a place no one could find them. He came back to Detroit alone, to keep gathering evidence, waiting for the safest moment. I couldn't let that network keep destroying lives. But Vincent had put a price on his head. Uncle was ambushed on the outskirts of town, shot in the shoulder. Bleeding heavily, he hid in the woods, patched himself up, then went completely dark so he wouldn't endanger his family. Unable to return to a normal life, he chose the perfect invisibility, a homeless man. No one notices the homeless. I lived near Vincent and Jackson's roots, he said. Slept on park benches, ate scraps, but I never stopped watching. I planted bugs, filmed, secretly documented every deal. I remembered all those evenings with the old man in the park, how he listened to me talk about my day, about family. I wanted to be close to you, Nathan, he whispered. I knew you were gentle, and I was terrified they'd target you. My heart warmed even as it ached. He had sacrificed everything, his family, his health, his identity, just to bring justice. While gathering evidence, he discovered Jackson was under fresh federal scrutiny. The ring was about to be exposed. They needed a fall guy to misdirect the investigation. From the recordings, Uncle heard Vincent give the order, if we have to sacrifice someone, it's Nathan. He's weak, he's kind, and he won't fight back. Hearing those words, ice ran down my spine. I had never felt so small, so disposable in the eyes of the people who raised me. Why? Why me, Uncle? I whispered, my voice cracking. He took my hand. Because you trusted them completely, Nathan, and they knew it. Uncle Jameson knew I was the next target. He tried to warn me indirectly in the park. Family isn't always what you think. Be careful, even with those closest to you. I remember those exact words. I had thought they were just the ramblings of a lonely old man. He waited for the one moment it would be safe to reveal himself, my trial. When the media, the prosecutor, and the court were all present, and Vincent had no chance to silence him first. I had to wait until it was safest, he said, his eyes red. If I came out earlier, they might have killed me, and you'd still be convicted. When Uncle Jameson finished, the room fell into heavy silence. Mom held me tighter, tears falling silently. I stared out the window at the soft Detroit snowfall, but inside me, a storm raged. 3 years of disappearance, a story of sacrifice, danger, and quiet, fierce love. Uncle had risked his life to save mine, to save justice. And me? I had lost my family. Or rather, I realized the family I thought I had never truly existed. Dad and Jackson were in jail, awaiting their trials. Mom was shattered. I squeezed his hand and whispered, "Thank you, Uncle. I'm not alone anymore." He smiled, patted my shoulder. "Never again, Nathan." But the silence was heavy, because we both knew these wounds would take a very long time to heal. My life had turned a new page, yet the shadow of the past still loomed large. A little while later, as the air in the room remained heavy, Uncle Jameson slowly stood up and reached for that old leather satchel. I watched him, a mix of curiosity and exhaustion in my eyes. "Uncle, is there something else you haven't told us?" I asked softly, my voice still trembling from the earlier revelations. He nodded. This time, his eyes weren't filled with pain. They shone with something else, hope. He opened the satchel and carefully pulled out a thick packet of documents, sealed with red wax, bound with cord. The pages looked old but well preserved. He placed it on the coffee table and spoke in a low, warm voice. "Nathan, this is the trust fund your grandfather, Milton Reyes, left specifically for you. For the past 5 years, I have been secretly managing it, exactly as he instructed." I froze, staring at the packet like it was an object from another planet. A trust fund? From Grandpa? Grandpa Milton Reyes had died 5 years ago. A quiet man, but he always had a strange magnetic pull on me. He lived alone in a small wooden house, made modest investments, rarely got involved in family matters. But to me, he was the only real emotional anchor I ever had. Why would he leave me a trust fund? And why had Uncle Jameson been managing it? "Uncle, you're saying Grandpa left this for me?" I stammered, my trembling fingers brushing the papers. Mom, sitting beside me, widened her eyes. "Milton, he never said a word to me about this." Uncle Jameson nodded, sat down next to me, and spoke slowly. "Right before he passed, your grandfather called me to his bedside. He entrusted me with this fund. He said, only give it to Nathan when he's been pushed to the absolute edge, when no one else is left to protect him, when he truly needs a completely new life." His words exploded in my mind like another bomb. Grandpa knew. He foresaw that one day I would be driven to total despair. My heart pounded. A strange feeling crept in, warmth mixed with pain. I remembered Grandpa's deep, knowing gaze whenever he looked at me, as if he could see straight into my soul. He never spoke of money, only taught me about life. Now this trust fund felt like a message from beyond the grave. With shaking hands, I broke the wax seal and began turning the pages. Numbers danced before my eyes, meticulously recorded by lawyers and banks. The total value of the trust, $12.5 million. A fortune I had never even dreamed of. It included $4 million in cash, safely held in banks. $3.5 million in blue-chip stocks from companies like Apple and Microsoft. A large commercial plot on the outskirts of Detroit, worth $3 million, perfect for a shopping center or warehouse. And $2 million in a high-yield investment fund Grandpa had personally set up for me, compounding over the years. With every page, my heart grew heavier. These weren't just numbers. They were a legacy. They were love. Proof that my grandfather had seen worth in me when no one else did. All my life, I had felt like the odd one out. Dad thought I was weak. Jackson outshone me in everything. Mom loved me but couldn't shield me. Grandpa had been the exception, but he died too soon, leaving an emptiness. Now, this trust was his quiet declaration. I saw you. I believed in you. I turned to the last page, heart racing. Tucked between the documents was a small, yellowed envelope. On the front, in Grandpa's familiar, shaky but elegant handwriting, "To Nathan, the grandson I was always proud of." My chest tightened. Proud of me? Me? The gentle, weak Nathan? My fingers trembled as I opened it. The wax seal crumbled. Inside was a handwritten letter on thin, fragile paper that still carried the faint scent of old wood, pine, and the crackling radio from his cabin. I choked up the moment I read the first lines, and began reading aloud, my voice shaking so Mom and Uncle could hear. "Nathan, if you are reading this letter, it means you are going through something no one else can help you with. Never forget, you are the only one in this family with the kindest heart. Don't let anyone crush that. I watched you grow up. I saw what you endured without ever complaining. You are not like your father or your brother. You have goodness. You have sensitivity. They lack. That is not weakness, Nathan. That is strength. I believe in you, Nathan. And one day you will be the one to save this family in a way no one expects. Use this gift wisely. Build the life you deserve. I am proud of you, always. Grandpa Milton. By the time I reached the end, I couldn't hold it together. My eyes burned. My chest felt crushed. He believed I would save the family, the same family that had just betrayed me. Tears fell freely, splashing onto the page, blurring the ink. I let the letter drop into my lap, my hands shaking. All this time, I had thought I was alone. Dad turned his back. Jackson framed me. The world condemned me. But right then, I realized someone had believed in me long before everything collapsed. Grandpa had seen it coming. He had prepared an escape for me. In that instant, memories of him flooded back like a rushing river. Weekend visits to his little wooden house on the edge of the forest, filled with the smell of pine and his old jazz radio. It was the only place I could truly breathe, truly be myself. No yelling from Dad. No mocking laughter from Jackson. Grandpa would sit in his rocking chair, pipe in hand, smiling as I ran to him. Nathan, you're here. Tell me how your day was. I'd throw myself into his arms and pour out everything. Being bullied. Dad telling me I wasn't man enough. He listened without judgment, just nodding, stroking my hair. Grandpa Milton noticed things about me no one else did. One look, and he knew what sadness I was hiding. When Dad had scolded me, when Jackson had teased me to tears, all he had to do was open his arms and I became a little boy again. Safe. Loved. He taught me what my father never did. How to stand tall when others looked down on you. How to keep kindness even when misunderstood. And most importantly, that sensitivity is not weakness. You have a heart stronger than anyone else in this house combined. Nathan, he'd said once, ruffling my hair, his voice warm like a winter fireplace. While the rest of the family saw me as weak, Grandpa Milton saw resilience, decency, honesty. The very qualities he believed would one day become the brightest light. He'd tell me about his own life, how he started poor, was cheated, but built his modest investment fund through honesty. You'll do even greater things than I ever did, Nathan, he'd say, eyes sparkling. Now, this trust proved his words. He had prepared a future for me, knowing the family might one day fall apart. I sat there, the letter in my hands, tears falling unchecked. Those memories were sweet knives, cutting through the pain to reveal hope. Grandpa, he had seen me. He had loved me in a way no one else ever had. While my father and brother pushed me towards prison, Grandpa reached out from the grave with a way out. I turned to Uncle Jameson, my eyes wet but brighter than they had been in weeks, and pulled him into a long, fierce hug. Heavy, aching, but warm. A hug that said, all the humiliation, fear, and loneliness of the past days had finally been shared. He wrapped his arms around me, patting my back, his voice thick with emotion. You're not alone anymore, Nathan. You and I, we're going to take everything back. Our lives, justice, and trust. Mom sat beside us, crying, too, her hand resting on our shoulders. The living room felt warmer, even as snow kept falling outside the window. This trust fund wasn't just money. It was Grandpa's reminder from beyond the grave. You are worthy. You are strong. And you can start again. Immediately after the arrest warrants were issued, Vincent and Jackson were taken into custody. The news exploded like a bomb. Police officer aided drug ring. Father and son garage buses arrested inside courtroom. I sat at home in the now cold, familiar living room, watching TV with Mom and Uncle Jameson. Every channel repeated the same footage. My father and brother in handcuffs, being led out of the courthouse. An endless nightmare. Federal task forces, working with Detroit police, raided multiple locations. Uncle Jameson, still in contact with the prosecutors, kept us informed. They stormed Dad's auto shop, the very place I used to help him fix engines on weekend afternoons. A secret warehouse was sealed off. Cardboard boxes, filled with opaque white packets, drugs, were dragged out under blinding press camera flashes. Dozens in the network were arrested. Unfamiliar drivers I'd seen at the garage, fellow officers Jackson used to brag about. Vincent's hidden accounts were frozen. Millions in laundered money that Uncle Jameson had tracked for 3 years. I sat there, watching it all unfold on television, my heart shrinking with every report. The media swarmed the city like a disturbed hive. My case dominated front pages, from the Detroit Free Press to CNN, labeled the darkest family scandal in Detroit in a decade. I didn't dare go outside, afraid of neighbors' stares, of relentless reporters. Mom cried nonstop, flipping through channels, watching the images of Vincent and Jackson being led away, heads bowed. "How? How could they do this to you?" she whispered, her hands trembling around the remote. Uncle Jameson stayed with us, sharing more details. Based on his testimony and documents, federal agents reconstructed the entire money laundering operation through the garage, drug trafficking from Mexico, and how Jackson had manipulated evidence to frame others. "Not just you, Nathan," Uncle said bitterly, "but several innocent people before you. They'd done it many times. But with you, it was the worst." My blood ran cold. Jackson, the hero with the badge, was actually twisting the law. I remembered him telling stories of arrests while the family applauded. Now every word felt like poison. Months passed slowly, like a sluggish river, carrying pain away, easing the nightmares. The trial of Vincent and Jackson opened on a chilly spring day. The courtroom was packed, reporters, lawyers, curious onlookers. Headlines screamed, "The Reyes family trial. Police officer and father charged with drug trafficking." Uncle Jameson, Mom, and I sat quietly in the back row, the three people most scarred by their crimes. I wore a simple shirt, clutching Mom's trembling hand. Uncle Jameson sat on my other side, face grim, ready to face this final chapter. The large courtroom felt suffocating, smelling of old paper and cheap perfume. The judge, a stern middle-aged woman, banged her gavel. I looked at the defendant's bench. Dad and Jackson sat there, thinner after months in jail, their faces gaunt, eyes avoiding the gallery. Vincent glanced at me for a second, his gaze full of anger, not a trace of remorse. Jackson kept his head down. My heart ached. They had once been my family. The prosecutor, the same sharp woman who had once accused me, stood and presented an avalanche of evidence. She played the video of Jackson planting drugs in my car on Christmas Eve. The footage was crystal clear, causing gasps throughout the room. "This is evidence tampering and fabrication to frame an innocent person," she declared, her voice like steel. Next came financial records of money laundering through Vincent's garage. Massive sums funneled through hundreds of fake accounts. Confessions from arrested ring members echoed over the speakers. Vincent was the boss. Jackson covered for us. And the climax, the recording of Vincent coldly saying, "Sacrificing Nathan is fine as long as we're safe." Mom buried her face in her hands, sobbing, when his voice filled the room. Jackson tried to blame his father. "Dad forced me. I was just following orders." Vincent fired back. "He did it on his own. I didn't know anything." Their selfishness and utter lack of remorse were laid bare. No regret, only desperate attempts to save themselves. Their defense attorneys scrambled, but the evidence was overwhelming. I watched them, torn between rage and pity. Why wouldn't they admit it? Why not apologize to me, to Mom? Mom sat silently crying the entire time. She had never imagined the day her husband and son would be tried as some of the city's most dangerous criminals. She used to cook for Vincent every night, beam with pride at Jackson's badge. Now she sat, trembling, hands over her mouth. "Mom, are you okay?" I whispered, holding her tighter. She shook her head, tears streaming. "I still can't believe it. I can't believe they did this." Uncle Jameson placed a hand on her shoulder. "We have to be strong, sister." The trial lasted several days, each one revealing more horrors. How many innocent people Jackson had framed, how many tons of drugs Vincent had moved. I listened, my heart frozen, flashing back to family dinners that now felt like monstrous lies. Finally, sentencing day arrived. The courtroom was more packed than ever. The judge stood, her voice grave. Vincent Reyes, 35 years in prison for money laundering, drug trafficking, and conspiracy to commit murder. Jackson Reyes, 28 years, for aiding and abetting, evidence tampering, and planting false evidence to frame an innocent person. The sentences rang out like thunder. The room erupted, Cameras flashing non-stop, voices rising. Vincent and Jackson were cuffed and led away, their faces pale and broken. Vincent struggled weakly. Jackson walked with his head down, silent tears falling. I watched them one last time. That was my father, my brother, now prisoners. After the verdict, the three of us stood and quietly left the courtroom. No words, just walking side by side, each carrying our own wounds. Mom cried silently. Uncle Jameson sighed, and I felt empty. Outside, dozens of reporters surged forward, microphones raised. Nathan, how do you feel about your father and brother's sentences? I turned away. Uncle Jameson shielded us. No comment. Please give us space. The case became one of the biggest shocks in Detroit history, not just for the scale of the drug ring, but for the family tragedy laid bare. I went home, shut the door, and collapsed. I took a deep breath of the cold spring air. It felt as though I had finally stepped out of the last shadow of my old life. Behind me, the trial, the testimony, the sentences, the betrayal. Ahead, a new life I never imagined. Freedom, the trust fund, and hope. The pain was still there, and I knew it would take a long time to heal. But for the first time, the future felt possible. Several months after the trial, my life slowly turned a new page, like an old book finally opening to its next chapter. The first days were hard. I still woke up haunted by prison memories, by the cold eyes of my father and brother flashing across the TV screen. Public attention remained intense. Reporters still lurked outside the gate. But I began to learn how to live again. With the enormous $12.5 million trust fund Grandpa had left me, Uncle Jameson and I decided to start a private security and investigation firm. We named it Reyes Investigations, specializing in helping victims who had been wrongfully accused and cooperating with police on drug cases. We used part of the fund to rent a small office in downtown Detroit, buy surveillance equipment, and hire a few young investigators. I remember the first day we opened, standing outside, watching the sign gleam in the spring sunlight, thinking, this is the beginning. No longer the weak Nathan. Now I was a man standing tall, just as Grandpa had taught me. The company grew fast, thanks to Uncle Jameson's vast experience and my own dedication. Uncle, with his 3 years on the streets, tracking criminals, handled the complex cases, planting bugs, analyzing evidence. I, still carrying the raw pain of being framed, poured my heart into the victims, listening to their stories, arranging legal help, even holding them while they cried about their own nights of wrongful imprisonment. We became an inseparable duo, one seasoned and scarred from ambushes and years on the run, one resilient, forged in personal hell. Our first case, freeing a young man framed for drug possession, just like me. We obtained security camera footage proving he'd been set up, and the court released him. Word spread. Clients flooded in. Single mothers falsely accused of theft. Business owners sabotaged by rivals. Revenue soared. We expanded the office, hired more investigators. One late night, after cracking a major case, taking down a small drug ring, Uncle clapped me on the shoulder. Nathan, you did great. Your grandfather would be proud. I smiled, eyes stinging with tears. The company wasn't just work. It was how I healed, turning pain into strength, making sure others never suffered the hell I had. With the trust money, I bought a spacious new house on the outskirts of Detroit. 2 stories, a green garden, a small pool, a bright living room overlooking a lake. I brought Mom, Camila, to live with me. After all the grief and collapse, we finally had a peaceful place to start over. She had lived too long in the old house, filled with horrific memories, where Christmas dinner fell apart, where her husband and son plotted betrayal. When she stepped into the new house, her eyes lit up. It's so beautiful, son. I never thought I'd live in a peaceful place like this again. We decorated together, hung old photos of Grandpa, planted flowers, cooked simple meals. She began smiling more, telling stories of her youth, even joining a local yoga club. That house became a real home. No more shouting from Dad. No more cold stares from Jackson. Mother and son healed each other, slowly letting the darkness fade. I also bought a smaller house for Uncle Jameson and his family when they returned from witness protection. After 3 long years in hiding, his wife, Elena, and daughter, Lily, were finally safe to come home to Detroit. The day they arrived, Uncle and I waited at the airport, hearts pounding. When Elena and Lily walked through the gate, Uncle Jameson ran to them and broke down right there in the terminal, tears streaming down his face. Tears of joy after 3 years apart. I stood a few steps back, my eyes burning at the sight of their reunion. After everything we had endured, seeing his family whole and safe again, it was worth more than anything money could buy. Time passed. The wounds slowly healed, like deep cuts carefully bandaged. The company thrived. Mom grew happier. Uncle was reunited with his family. Everything felt like a brighter picture. I began sleeping through the night again, no longer tormented by prison nightmares or the flashing lights of that Christmas Eve. But the past still lingered. One day, sitting at my office desk, looking at Grandpa's photo, the thought hit me. Grandpa had written, "You will save the family in a way no one expects." I needed to close that chapter, to lift the burden from my heart. I called Mom. "Mom, I want to visit Dad and Jackson in prison. Will you come with me?" She was silent for a long time, then nodded. "Yes, son, we should go. To finish this." We prepared ourselves, my heart a mix of nerves and fear. This would be the first time I faced them since the trial, since learning the horrifying truth. Mom and I drove to the prison, a gray, forbidding complex surrounded by razor wire and towering guard posts. The air inside was cold, sterile. Harsh neon lights stretched down endless corridors, making everything feel alien, cruel. We passed through security and sat in the visitation room, a small space with a steel table, thick glass partition, and an old telephone. My heart pounded. Cold sweat broke out. Mom sat beside me, her trembling hand gripping mine. What was I doing? To forgive, or to face the pain one last time? Vincent, my father, was brought in first. He looked worn, his gray prison uniform rumpled, beard unkempt. But his eyes still held the same arrogant hardness. He sat across from us, picked up the phone, and stared through the smudged glass. "Nathan, what are you here for?" To gloat. His voice was harsh. No greeting, no warmth. Jackson followed, his face gaunt, eyes red from sleepless nights and regret, hair messy. He sat beside Dad, glanced at me, then looked down. The tension was unbearable, like a string about to snap. Vincent stared at me, then immediately launched into the same old script, as if he'd rehearsed it for months. His voice was venomous. "If you hadn't been so weak, if you'd been more like Jackson, stronger, tougher, none of this would have happened. I did everything for this family." Still no remorse, no apology, just cold, shameless denial. I was framed, Nathan. I didn't do anything wrong. It was Jameson. My own brother set me up. He slammed his fist on the steel table. The clang echoed, as if he were desperately clinging to his final lies. I looked at him and felt nothing. No anger, no pain, just emptiness. I realized the man in front of me had never truly been a father. He had only ever used his children as tools. Mom sat silently crying beside me, squeezing my hand tighter. Jackson was different. For the first time since his arrest, my brother looked up. His eyes were tormented, brimming with unshed tears. "Nathan, I was wrong. I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Dad manipulated me, but I should have stopped. I'm sorry. Sorry for what I did to you. For sending you to jail." The apology hung in the air, raw, sincere, and it twisted something deep inside me. Jackson, the idol who taught me to kick a soccer ball, who told heroic police stories, was now broken before me. I was silent for a long time, looking at the two men across the glass. One who would never take responsibility, still blaming the world and me. One who was finally facing his guilt, head bowed, tears falling. The visitation room felt frozen, only heavy breathing and Mom's quiet sobs. Finally, I spoke, calm but firm. "I don't hate you anymore, Jackson. I forgive you, but I won't see you again. And, Dad, live with the choices you made. This ends hey. Vincent opened his mouth to argue, his face turning red, but no words came. He just sat there, glaring. Jackson bowed his head, tears dripping onto the steel table, his voice cracking. Nathan, thank you for forgiving me. I stood, placed my hand on the glass one last time, and told them I would live my own life now, free of their shadows. Then I turned and walked out, leaving behind a man who would never change, and another who was just beginning to pay the price. As the heavy iron door slammed shut behind me and I walked down the cold corridor, I felt lighter than I had in years. Like a 1,000-pound weight had finally been lifted. Mom walked beside me, wiping her tears. My son is so strong. We stepped outside into the cool spring breeze, and for the first time, I breathed deeply, without pain. A new life lay ahead. Mom by my side, Uncle Jameson, my true family. A growing company filled with new cases, and a wide-open future backed by the trust fund. I thought of Grandpa's letter, "You will save the family in a way no one expects." Maybe forgiveness was that way. I don't know. But I know this, I am finally free. A year after the case closed, my life had completely transformed. It felt like a storm had passed, leaving behind a clear blue sky. Reyes Investigations was firmly established, with a waiting list of clients and a reputation spreading far and wide. I started speaking at community events, sharing my story to raise awareness about wrongful convictions and the dangers of drugs. At one anti-drug seminar in downtown Detroit, I met Kay Grant, a young, warm-hearted social worker whose smile lit up the room, her green eyes sparkling with genuine light. She spoke about helping addiction victims, her voice gentle yet powerful. "We don't just save their bodies," she said, "we save their souls." I sat in the audience, my heart stirring. She was speaking about healing, about hope after loss, just like my own journey. After her talk, I approached her, a little nervous. "Miss Grant, your story, it's a lot like mine. I was falsely accused once, and now I help others in the same situation." She smiled, her eyes lighting up. "Nathan Reyes, I've read so much about you. You're incredibly brave." We talked for hours about our losses. She lost her father to addiction. I lost my family to betrayal. We talked about our drive to heal, Hayes through social work, mine through investigations. We quickly discovered how much we had in common, like two missing puzzle pieces clicking into place. Our first dates, coffee walks in the park, were filled with butterflies. My heart raced when she laughed, when she held my hand and said, "Nathan, you're stronger than you know." Kay became the soft light that slipped into the darkest corners of my soul, helping me step out of the past, helping me dare to believe in the future again. The following year, Kay and I were married in a small but love-filled ceremony, just close friends and real family. Uncle Jameson, Aunt Elena, Lily, and Mom. We held it in the backyard of our new home under the warm summer sun, surrounded by roses Mom had planted. Kay walked toward me in a simple white dress, her eyes shining with happy tears. "Nathan, I love you for who you are, strong from the heart." I slipped the ring on her finger, my voice trembling. "Kay, you are my hope. Together, we will heal." The ceremony was simple, but overflowing with laughter. No extravagance, just pure warmth, the way a real family should be. When our first daughter was born, we named her Mila, in memory of Grandpa Milton. Our once quiet refuge after the storm now echoed with a child's laughter, sweet baby coos, and tiny feet pattering across the floor. Mila has her mother's green eyes and her father's gentle smile. Every night, I hold her close and whisper, "I'll protect you forever, my love." Mom, Camila, became the happiest grandmother, caring for Mila every day, singing her the same lullaby she once sang to me, her voice warm and tender. "Grandma loves you, Mila. You are the new light of this house." Her wounds slowly faded beneath her granddaughter's giggles. Watching her cradle Mila, I thought, this is redemption. A new family making up for the old losses. The company Uncle Jameson and I built grew strong, like an ancient tree sprouting new branches after a storm. We partnered with the Detroit police, rehab centers, and charities to support victims of false accusations and abuse of power. Our reputation spread across Michigan. People came to us carrying hope. We cracked major cases, freeing a teenager wrongfully jailed for drugs, helping women framed by ex-husbands. Uncle led the dangerous fieldwork. I handled the emotional support. Newspapers praised us, Reyes investigations, from victim to hero. I smiled when I read it, then turned to Uncle. None of this would have happened without you. He clapped my shoulder. Nathan, you are the soul of this company. From everything we had endured, Uncle Jameson and I founded the Break the Chains Foundation, an organization dedicated to helping people framed in drug cases, getting them into rehab, helping them rebuild, giving them a second chance at life. We funded it with part of the trust, partnered with treatment centers, provided free lawyers, and offered job training. The foundation quickly took off, saving dozens of teens lost to addiction, mothers falsely accused. One case moved me deeply. A young man, just like I once was, framed by so-called friends. We got him clean and found him a job. He hugged me, crying, "Nathan, you saved my life." I cried, too, thinking of the old me. The foundation became my legacy, not just saving others, but saving my own soul, turning pain into purpose. That Christmas, thick snow fell over Detroit, but warm, golden lights covered every corner of our new home, turning it into a glowing sanctuary. The whole family gathered, Uncle Jameson with Aunt Elena and Lily, laughing brightly. Mom, now a joyful grandmother. Kay, my wife, and little Mila, just learning to say Daddy in the sweetest lisping voice. We gathered around the table, the scent of roasted meat and cinnamon cookies filling the air. The Christmas tree sparkled with glass ornaments. No trace of that horrific night years ago. Laughter rang through the house. Lily playing with Mila. Aunt Elena telling cooking stories. Uncle Jameson roaring with laughter when Kay teased him about his old homeless disguise. I stood quietly for a moment, taking in every beloved face. The people who truly loved me, without betrayal, without selfishness. Suddenly, I remembered that Christmas Eve long ago. Handcuffs, sirens, flashing lights. My mother's sobs as I was dragged away like a criminal. Tears welled up, but not from pain. From gratitude. Now it was Christmas again, but I was surrounded by light, held in the arms of those who deserved to be called family, not by blood, but by love. I raised my glass, looking at the flickering candles on the table, and spoke, my voice low but full of emotion. We cannot choose the family we are born into, but we can choose the family we keep. Never let the cruelty of others define your worth. And if life throws you into darkness, become your own light first. For a few seconds, everyone was silent, my words hanging in the warm air. Then soft applause broke out. Uncle Jameson looked at me with proud, misty eyes. Nathan, you've grown up. Mom wiped away tears and smiled. My son, your grandfather would be so happy. Kay squeezed my hand under the table and whispered, you are the light of my life. That Christmas night, I finally understood. The wounds that once tried to destroy me were the very things that made me stronger and led me to the real family I was always meant to have. Snow fell softly outside the window, but inside, warmth spread everywhere, and I knew my life had truly begun. Tell me, if you were in my shoes, what would have been the hardest part for you to overcome? I really want to know what you think.